My name is Adam Modicek. I am the hatchery superintendent here at Bobby N. Setzer State Fish Hatchery. So yeah, this fish hatchery was built in the mid to late 1950s. It was operated by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service up until 1983. In 1983, it was then transferred to the Wildlife Commission or the state of North Carolina, and it has been operated by the state of North Carolina ever since. The facility currently is producing fish, but is closed to the public at this time due to kind of the devastation from Tropical Storm Fred in August of 2021. This whole facility flooded. We lost approximately 750,000 fish, approximately 140,000 pounds worth of trout. The wildlife center that was down at the bottom end, the whole building was inundated in floodwaters. The whole building has been gutted and will be destroyed here eventually. The fish hatchery will be going through a renovation, hopefully starting next year. Once the renovation is complete, the public will be allowed to come back up here and feed fish, and there will be programs, to educate the public on the hatchery and trout fishing and conservation in western North Carolina. So this is the egg incubation room. This is where we house about 3 million trout eggs. The trout eggs are brought to us by the mail from a federal fish hatchery in Tennessee, Irwin National Fish Hatchery. We also have our own brood stock outside, so we essentially collect those eggs in the fall each year, bring them in here. They develop. Once they develop, they're sent through a egg picker, which sends an infrared light through every single egg. If the egg is bad, it kicks it out. All the good eggs continue in here and develop. They hatch, and then once they absorb their yolk sac, start to swim up, meaning they're going to in search of food. They are then transferred out into the troughs in the hatchery building. Yeah, so this is an egg tray. So essentially, we set flows, water flows through these trays. They essentially dump out into the back here. Water comes in the back, flows through, up through the eggs, out the front, back down the sides, and then back into the next one. That keeps the eggs aerated with oxygen and nice water. This is the hatchery building, so this is where all the fry and fingerlings are raised. So they hatch, they develop, they come out here. They're eating food, they're growing, and once they reach about 2.5 inches in size, they are then moved outside. Back here, they're on a certain amount of water per trough. Like I said, they get fed a certain amount of feed every day. They're monitored by staff for fish health. Make sure there's enough dissolved oxygen in the water. Make sure there's enough water. It's a science. So once fry and the hatchery building go into feed, they're fed various sizes of feed. It's essentially really small stuff, kind of like crumbs. The even smaller stuff is almost like sawdust. And that the fish are put on projections is what it's called, so we know how many fish are in each trough. They get fed a certain amount of feed, a certain size of feed per day. And then once they outgrow their space inside the hatchery building here, they are then moved outside to the raceways. All right, so there's approximately 20,000 rainbow trout in this raceway. These fish are about 4.5 inches long at this time. These fish will be stocked this fall as 10-inch fish. So here's the outside. So, like I said, once fish reach about 2.5 inches, they're then moved outside the outside raceways. So we know how many fish are in every single one of these raceways, how big they are. They're sampled to keep up, so we know how well they're growing. They're all on projections, meaning they're fed a certain amount of food every day, a certain size of food every day, and we can tell you exactly how big they will be however many weeks, months, years from now. Outside here, there's 3 species of trout, brook brown and rainbows, anywhere from 3 inches all the way up to about 25 inches. So water comes in from our water sources, passes over these boxes called low head oxygenators. Those supply oxygen to the fish. Pretty much the outside is making sure you have good water quality, making sure you're feeding fish and fish are growing, and then fish are stocked out of all of these raceways every day. The feed storage room, this is where we house all the feed that we get in and feed out in a climate controlled room. Like I said, we feed essentially 26 different types of feed a year. We feed approximately 450,000 pounds worth of food a year. A lot of it's by hand, but the majority of it is done by a truck that has a mechanism on it that weighs out feed and feeds fish accordingly based off of switches and all kind of that good stuff. So staff is not killing themselves feeding 400 and some thousand pounds of feed a year. And then here you can see the size differences. Before you were looking at small starter feeds, now you're starting to get into bigger pellets, and then once the fish get even bigger, you're essentially feeding even larger pellets. This is all made out of fish meal. We use a couple companies, one in Pennsylvania, one in Maine, and then one in Utah for getting our fish food. All right, so these are our stocking trucks. We essentially have 3 of the larger trucks, 1 smaller vehicle. Setzer Fish Hatchery, we stock approximately 650,000 fish a year out of these trucks. All right, so these are aerators. These essentially strip CO2 out of the water that fish produce. This is the inside of a stocking tank. We have air stones that supply oxygen to the fish. Obviously it houses water, and there's the aerator. Pretty simple. So water's filled up to a certain amount depending on how many fish we're hauling, and fish are loaded on here. A food grade deionizer's put in here that keeps the foam down. Fish will produce foam when they're stressed, so it keeps the foam down. And then if it's really hot, we actually have an ice machine that produces ice, and we'll put ice in here as well.